And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Now I've designed a game about being a criminal, about being in the mafia, and there's actually a decent amount of games, but oddly enough, there's very few games about being a police officer. Well, now we have a new cooperative game called Police Precinct. This is a new game from Common Man Games, distributed by Passport Games. Very interesting ideas. Look, it's the Chief! One of our reviewers on the Dice Tower. But let's explain the game and I'll come back and tell you if it's any good or not. In this cooperative game, you have a board here of the city. And I should mention, for reasons, that one of the streets here is called Vasel Avenue. And they asked me if they could do that. And I was, of course, pleased to say yes, because I've always wanted to drive down a street that had my name. And so what players are going to do in this game is they're going to take one of the different police officers that's available in the game. Each police officer has 3 different stats. It shows how good they are at investigations, how good they are at arresting punks, and how good they are at handling emergencies. They also have 2 special abilities. When you take one of these police officers, you will also take a matching police car, and you will start at the police station here. Each police car, when it starts at the police station, you can either decide to drive a police car or an unmarked car. Now, there's reasons for this. If you drive a police car, you'll be able to move 3 spaces on your turn, while only 2 with this, because you can go through lights and so on. Well, with unmarked car, though, you will have a little bit of advantage at investigation, so you have to decide which of these is better. Now, on a player's turn, they're going to move their police car, and they can move 2 or 3 spaces, depending on which side it's at. A space is basically a whole street, so I could, if I was going here, I could go 1, 2. I ignore the intersections. And so you drive around. Now, what you're trying to do is you're basically trying to do 3 things. Here's what's happened. There's been a murder, and the main goal of the game is to catch this murderer. However, crime in this town has not gone away. And so you must deal with the different crimes. So there's a couple things that you want to deal with. Let's go backwards and let's start with emergencies. Now, emergencies are going to show up all over the board. Here's an emergency over here. At First and Vasel, there's been a traffic accident. So if I want to handle that emergency, I just need to go adjacent to that, and I'm going to try to handle the emergency. To do that, I'm going to look at my card, and I'll see what the emergency number is. So that's a 1. So I start with a base of 1. For each other police car that happens to be adjacent to that traffic accident, I will get another +1. So let's say Officer Sears is there and another officer's up here. So now I have 3 dice. And then other players, not me, but other players can play police cards from their hand. And players will have a bunch of police cards in their hand, and these police cards let you do different things on your turn, but they also have a symbol on the top, and so other players can play it, ignoring the rest of the card, and that will give me +1 for each of these sirens that they play. Now, let's say, for example, one person plays a card, there's 2 other officers helping me, so I have 4 dice. I will roll those dice, and I take only the highest die. Does the highest die equal or match the emergency? If it does, the emergency goes away, and I might get a reward. In this case, I get a donut, or I can ignore drawing an event card this turn, so that's my choice. Now, not every emergency will be easy, and you won't always have that many dice, and some emergencies here, when they're put on the board, they have an unknown circumstance placed on them. For example, this one here, and I have to pick how many dice. So let's say I go in here with 3 dice. I say, all right, I got this. It's only a 3. That's pretty easy. I then look at the unknown circumstance. Oh no, the guy's wielding a big knife, so it's a difficulty of 4. There's a violent customer, so now I need to get a 4 or higher, which I still managed to do. But you're never sure what the unknown circumstance is. The guy might have some stolen goods, so if you get him, you get another police car. He might respect uniformed cops, so if you happen to be in your police car rather than unmarked car, you get an extra die. But he might have some punks with him, so you actually lose a die. So there's all different things that you will get He might not respect uniformed cops. So you're never sure when there's an unknown circumstance. And if you fail some of these emergencies, you might get sent to the hospital, in which case you'll lose 2 of the little police cards from your hand and have to go to the hospital. Another thing you could do is you can go to street punks. Now, street punks are going to show up in bad hoods. There's numbered bad hoods all over the board, and so as the game progresses, you'll start with several of these on the board, and as the game progresses, more of them will come out on the board. And you never want there to be 4 or more of them at a certain location. For example, you can see over here, on this hood, there's 3 of them. So if another one's at it, what will happen is a street gang will come out, and that street gang will have a name, and it will do something negative to the game. For example, this one here, while it's present, nobody can play any police cards. Well, that's a pain in the neck. So anyhow, you go there and you're going to handle this gang. When you do that, you'll take a look at your police card and you're going to look at the handcuffs. And that's how many dice you're going to roll again, just like before. And again, any other police officers at the same scene will give you an extra die, and players can play cards with handcuff symbols on them. Then when that happens, you roll dice and you look. Each die that you roll that is equal to or greater than the number of punks who are there. So the more punks there, the more trouble you have. So here I roll a 4 and a 6. That will get rid of 2 of the punks. I've arrested 2 punks. If I arrest 3 punks, I get a free donut. Yay! If I arrest no punks, that means they beat me up and you go to the hospital. Not so yay. The third thing you can do as the game progresses is go look for investigative evidence about the murderer. Now, what this happens is there's different places on the board to do this. Over here is the crime scene. In this game, the murder weapon's here. The murder weapon will change as game goes by. The witness. And then over here at the morgue, you can examine the body. When I go to one of these spots, I'll take a look at my character card and I'll see what my investigative skill is. I will add 1 to that if I'm in an unmarked car. And then, again, players can play cards with magnifying glasses on them and if there's other police officers there. So let's say I have 4, and I'm going to search for the murder weapon. That means I turn over 4 cards. So I turn over 4 cards and look at them. I don't show anybody else what they are. And you notice all these say nothing yet. So I can take one of these cards out of the game. I put the rest underneath and shuffle them. But eventually, hopefully, somebody will draw the murder weapon. Once you draw the murder weapon, you're going to place it on the evidence board. Here you have the evidence board, and you need to find all the evidence before you can arrest the murderer. So I found the murder weapon, I put it here. Notice I need to find 2 autopsy reports, 2 things from the witness statement, and 6 from the crime scene evidence. And so I have to go around the board and find all those and make sure that I get those and add them to this before I can arrest the murderer. See, over here we have a turn track, which is to keep track of the game and how many turns it takes, depending on how many players are in the game. And if that turn track reaches a certain point, what's going to happen is the murderer is going to show up in one of the hoods with the street punks. And you have to go arrest him, just like a normal street punk. If you do, you win the game. But you can't do that till you have found all the evidence. Once you found all the evidence, go arrest him, and you win. However, at the same time, you have to realize that there is this crime track here. This crime track here will increase as the street punks, if you need to put street punks on the board and you can't, then it will increase. And it can also increase if you don't handle emergencies. See, what's going to happen in this game is, at the end of each person's turn, you are drawing from this event deck. And this event deck is going to put more emergencies on the board. Now, you have different emergencies that are different colors. For example, I might get the yellow pickpocket here who shows up at the donut shop, or an escaped convict, or sometimes there's not an emergency, something bad happens, like here, 3 street punks show up in one of the hoods. Here's a red car shows up on the board that's been stolen, and you have to get 2 police officers to where the car is. It keeps moving one space. If it drives off the board, the city crime rate goes up by 1. And here we have burglars that will show up at a random warehouse, so I roll a die to see which warehouse it is. But let's say, for example, I have a violent customer at the cafe, and the burglar shows up. They're both blue emergencies. When a second emergency of the same color shows up, you will put an urgent marker on the first one. You need to solve that one. If you do not solve it, and another urgent marker needs to be put on the board, maybe there's 2 yellow emergencies or a third blue one shows up. At that point, this goes away, the urgent marker is moved, and the crime rate goes up by 1. If the crime rate gets to fail, you lose. If the murderer gets away, the turn track runs out basically, and the murderer gets off the board before you get all the evidence and arrest him, then you lose. To win, you simply need to arrest the murderer before the time runs out. but you got to handle everything else. You can go to the police precinct here on your turn and spend donuts. By the way, donuts can be spent for a huge variety of things like extra movement and extra dice and things, but you can spend donuts to get upgrades that will let you move faster or give you better investigation skill. So that's basically how you play the game, but also you can play with a dirty cop. At the beginning of the game, you can hand out cards to each player, and some of the cards will tell you you're a dirty cop or you're a good cop. The dirty cop is trying to effectively ruin the game, sink the game. Like when he draws cards from the crime scene evidence, he'll say, oh, I draw 4 cards. He looks at them and he says, oh, sorry guys, I didn't find anything, and puts it on the bottom and shuffles it. So that can be a pain, and he can do other things that can mess players up. You can spend 3 donuts to accuse him, and if you do, he can still cause, problems to the game, but less of them. So he's actively trying to win the game. There's also a way to play solitaire, or you can play 2 players. You have a 3rd police car moving around the board. But that's basically, in a nutshell, how the game works. All right, folks. When these people emailed me and said, would it offend you if we named a street after you? And why would that offend me? I think that's hilarious. But I didn't really know anything about the game. I got it and I said, okay, interesting police theme. That's great. Let me tell you this, folks. This is certainly in the running for one of the best cooperative games of the year, if not one of the best ones I've ever played. And that is essentially because the theme is so married to the game. Oh, I love the theme. It is, it's great, 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 great. I mean, because everything you do, you sit there and go, okay, I'm going to go take care of the street punks. I'm going to go over here and do the emergencies. Yeah, there's the donut funniness of it. But I mean, essentially, you're working together as a team, and you have to decide whether you're going to split up and cover the city as a whole or go together as a group and work together. And these events show up, and it's like, Now, this is a super prime candidate for a family game. I'm always looking for cooperative games that work well with the family. Pandemic, Flashpoint Fire Rescue, and this year, Police Precinct. I mean, really, just it works well. You don't have to play with all the options. You don't have to play with dirty cops with kids. You just work together and give them ideas, and it's so simple. But that being said, the dirty cop. That's just a concept. I love the idea of a traitor in the game, but although I'll tell you, the game works very well without that. So if you don't like a traitor game, don't worry about it. You don't have to play with that, and the game works perfectly fine. But if you do, then this is a fantastic one. This is when I was... there's so many ways for the dirty cop to get away with stuff. Many of the police officers have special abilities where they can take the top 2 events and put one on the bottom without, and so if you're a dirty cop, you put the bad one. But because all these police officers have these different abilities, you are so suspicious of everybody all the time. Now, of course, that's not good for the police force because you're supposed to be working together as a team, and the dirty cop has to pretend. Now, the dirty cop is only in larger games. I think at 5 or 6 players or so, or higher, where you have that in the game. Before that, just straight cooperative all the way. Oh, so thematic. I mean, I could easily see expansions be added to this, add more thematic cards, add more police cards. And the police cards, what a great concept that is. You can't play them to help yourself with the symbols. You can only play them to help other players. You can play them, though, for a special ability on your turn. So you have to decide, am I going to give you this card on your turn? But I could have used it on my turn. That back and forth, looking for evidence. Yes, I'm very giddy over this game because it's very entertaining. It looks, I'm looking at the board right now here on the set up on my table, and drive the cars around, and you just felt almost like you're playing a top-down video game as you move around and do the stuff. Okay, so I raved about this a lot, but really, really it's entertaining. I've played this many times, and everybody has enjoyed it. I don't know that anyone's enjoyed it as much as I have, but I'm just excited about it. And the idea of everybody working together. Now, it's not that difficult. I've beat it several times, but the rulebook lists like 30 ways that you can up the difficulty, and I'm afraid because each time we've won, we've barely won. So I'm afraid I don't want to push it over that limit. But either way, a great game, a great theme, certainly one that you should look out for this year, Police Precinct.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find the latest board game news at Dicetowernews.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Fun Again Games, the world's best game source. Fun Again Games has over 5,000 games available. Check them out at funagain.com.
Shut the door!